So, welcome everybody to Good Friday. We're going to be joined hopefully very shortly by a good friend of ours and a special guest for the chat today, Mr. Colin Montgomerie. So we've already had quite a few questions come in, so thank you for those, and look forward to chatting to him the moment he joins. So what I thought actually be quite good to start off with would be to give a little bit of a rundown. Not that anyone needs particularly reminding of Colin's achievements, but he's got a pretty good CV. So the sort of start off in terms of top level amateur golf, 2 Walker Cups, one at Pine Valley in 1985. There he is. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, thanks, Colin. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I was just going to give actually, I thought, a nice intro, a little sort of précis of your career and achievements. So we're saying a couple of Walker Cups, 1985, 1987. Turned pro in 1987. Then Rookie of the Year in 1988, with followed by 626 European Tour appearances, 31 wins, including 3 Volvo PGA Championships in a row. Not bad. 10 worldwide wins, including the World Cup with Mark Warren. 8 Order of Merits, 7 in a row, 93 to 99. World rank, highest world rank at number 2, 400 weeks in the top 10 of the world rankings. 8 Ryder Cups, including 5 wins, unbeaten in singles, winning Ryder Cup captain, as well as 3 senior majors, 2 senior European Tour Order of Merits, World Golf Hall of Fame in 2013, MBE in 1998, OBE in 2005. 14 courses currently designed, and the Elizabeth Montgomerie Foundation. Not bad, sir.
God, that was busy.
This is your life.
Yeah. Eamon Andrews stuff. Yeah, when you go through it, Simon, it reads well. From someone who was, when you start off this game, one never knows. And a lot of your customers come in there thinking, can I do this? Can I make it? Can I make it at this game? And unfortunately, I'm one of the lucky ones, but one in God knows how many nowadays, 10,000 or so actually make a living at it. It's got tougher. There's no question over the years. We didn't have the Asian influence that we do now. Everybody sees the rewards available, the lifestyles available, and people are working harder, tougher, longer at it to make it. And it is tougher now, but at the same time, I have to agree with you. That reads okay. That.
Is there a large trophy cabinet in the Montgomerie household to admire during lockdown?
Yeah. It takes a bit of cleaning sometimes. There's obviously three main items that take, there's 4 now really from 2013 that take precedence really. Obviously the 3 PGA championships, as you mentioned, at Wentworth, 98, 99, 2000. That was the peak of what I was trying to do, and to win at Wentworth 3 times in a row was as good as I could have done. So that's they're the first trophies that take precedence. The second lot, of course, are the 8+1 Ryder Cups. You get a memento of a Ryder Cup every time you play, whether you win or lose. And also you get a replica if you're the captain. So I played 8 times and I have 1 extra one. So there's the 9 Ryder Cups. And possibly, the main one is the 8 Orders of Merit, the Barden trophies that were done for me. That were all engraved for the years, and that one as well. And the 4th, really, I suppose, is the Hall of Fame trophy that one accepts when you're inducted, as I was, 7 years ago. When you think about it, that's it, really. There's not much more to go than the Hall of Fame. There's no other accolade that can go towards. So I'm very fortunate that those 4 trophies, 4 series of trophies remain intact. Yeah.
There's one actually. You noted the 7 Order of Merits in a row. Our coach Stuart Cartwright. One of his sort of main question to you is going to be, that's a hell of a lot of consistency of top level performance over a prolonged period of time. What do you think? What gave you that consistency in particular?
I hit the fairways, Simon, and it's something that's not really dealt with a lot nowadays. A lot of your customers are coming in, and I'm sure that a lot of people listening are more interested in the word length nowadays. And I wasn't. I was never interested in length. I was outdriven, yes, but they weren't finding the fairway. And if you didn't find the fairway, you weren't getting as close to the pin in two. Now, my idea and my thought process was, at a par 3, how do I give myself the shortest birdie putt? At a par 4, from the tee shot, how do I give myself the shortest birdie putt? And a par 5 as well. How do I give myself that short birdie putt? And it starts with a drive. Normally, if you make a double bogey or a triple or whatever the case may be, it very rarely starts off with, I ripped it down the middle. It usually starts off with, well, I just missed the fairway on the right, or I was in the rough on the right, and usually you made the wrong choice with the second shot, right? How you mess up. So hitting the fairways enabled me to use my main strength was my iron play. And I could hit the greens from the fairway 90% of the time. And that gave me a birdie putt. Nowadays, it's more, and I was hitting the ball then quite long for those days with the Ballesteros ball, the softer ball, the non-titanium clubs that we use nowadays. And I was hitting the ball about 270, which was in the top 25%, but it was accurate. Of those 7 years that I led the Order of Merit, I think 6 of them I was leading the fairways hit, and I think you'll find all 7 was I led the greens in regulation.
I didn't delve quite that deep in the stats when I was.
Okay, that was why the consistency was there, because I hit the fairways. And it's gone from the game, and I'm disappointed in some ways that it has gone from the game. They make these courses longer and longer, so therefore everyone tries to hit the ball further and further. When actually, the fairway's good. I love the fairway. They cut it for you. They make it easy for you. They cut it for you. They make the strike of the iron shot easier. You, however long the grass is, and we're supposed to play the Masters this week, and you see how difficult it is from that so-called first cut they talk about at the Masters. How difficult it is to control the ball, even from, it's that long.
Yeah.
Right? We're not allowed to call it rough. When I was in Sky Sports, I had to call it first cut. Right? And it's incredible the difference of the control of the second shot from that compared to the fairway. Massive difference. So the fairway was my key.
So I guess that's actually kind of one of the start questions that we'd got down. Your career from 87 to current spans pretty much, it's the most prolific period of equipment development over the years. You think, going back beyond that, you'd got basically steel shafts and a bit of perimeter weighting on iron heads, and that was in the ground of the ball developed, but over a long period of time. But from late 80s, early 90s through to sort of late 2000s, that period in particular, you've got wooden woods going into metal woods, graphite shafts being developed, Ballesteros going to the Pro V1, the groove rule changed because of ping with the irons, then limitations on driver faces, on forgiveness, and then groove restrictions on wedges more recently. Which equipment changes had the biggest effect? And during your career, at what point did you think the technology, including analysis, was making a big difference to what you were doing?
Interesting question. God, I could be all day answering this one. I think the biggest difference that we found back in the very early 90s was the metal-headed driver. Suddenly, Greg Norman lost his greatest asset. He was the best driver of a golf ball that we've ever seen, Greg Norman. And for those of you who don't know or haven't seen Greg Norman hit a driver, a persimmon driver, it was something to behold. there was two people I would go and watch on a range when I first turned pro, right? And when I first turned pro in '87, yes, there was just coming out metal woods, but it was mostly, remember the tailor-made Pittsburgh persimmon, they called it, because Pittsburgh was a steel town, and it was all steel. That was around about that time, about 85, 80, 82, 3, 4. You watched Greg Norman hit. I watched two people on the range, right? One of them was Greg Norman. The other one was Howard Clark. Now, Howard Clark was a very underrated golfer. Very underrated, and swung the club and struck the ball beautifully. Two people I would watch, and they were the best drivers of ball with a persimmon club. Suddenly we all could do it, right? We all could do it. And I look, I've got a prop here. Here we are. This is it here. Right. Here we are. Right. This changed, this club, this very club here, changed the world of driving a golf ball, right? And it dominated, right? I'm not saying because I was with them at the time. I'll turn it over and I'll show you. There it is there. Callaway, right? The Callaway Big Bertha driver, 10-degree loft. S2H2, it says on the side. Short, straight, hollow, hosel.
Yeah.
Right? That's what that stood for. And this was my first ever Callaway metal driver. It changed the world. This was the days before the Great Big Bertha and the biggest Big Bertha. Everybody wanted one of these, right? It had an asbestos middle that they had to change because of health reasons eventually. They made it hollow. But this is the older one. And this is the very club. This has if you see here, it has a silver and red and silver shaft, right? And it's very worn. You see, if you can see that in your TV, that's very worn. It's been in the bag a few times. This was the club that I hit in 1996 over the lake at Dubai to win the Dubai Desert Classic, and it won the shot of the year that year in 1996. So my only plaque that is around worldwide is at the Emirates Club in Dubai. This was the club that dominated. We haven't had a club manufacturer really that's dominated since the Callaway Big Bertha era. So this changed. I could suddenly, with this club, and I proved it often, got to hit some fairways with this club, I tell you. This is priceless to me. I would never, this is in my will, actually, this club. It's priceless, yeah.
So was it,
priceless.
I mean, you hit a lot of fairways anyway.
This club enabled me to do what Greg Norman did.
Right.
This club enabled us all to do what Greg Norman could do with the driver. We could find the fairways and we could be longer. Now, isn't that a great invention? So that's that very club. I'll put it down very, very gently because that's in a special trophy case at home, I tell you. So we could all do what Greg Norman did with the driver. Also, you mentioned earlier on, Ping developed the so-called L wedge, the lob wedge. And suddenly, with the square grooves, the box grooves that are now banned, we could do everything with a 60-degree lob wedge that Seve could do with his 55, I think Seve had. So suddenly his greatest asset was gone as well. So there's two fantastic changes in the game to make it easier for the likes of us. One was the driver that we all could do with the metal, and then it became titanium in its day. This was stainless, but it became bigger, lighter, faster, titanium, more forgiveness. And also Seve lost out with the fact that we all could do what he could do with a Ping L wedge. We all had one. The Ping I2 L wedge. Didn't we all have one? I think those two inventions really changed the way that I thought about the game. And that's without the ball.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about the Ballesteros ball that we used to use. A very soft 90 compression ball that didn't really go very far, but it was consistent. Now we're using balls that, if you hit a Ballesteros ball now, compared to the most recent 2019, it is Pro V1, and you hit a 7-iron, for instance, a normal 7-iron, what would you say? 10, 15 yards further.
We did a test on this a couple of years back, or a year or so ago, and we had a Ballata and a persimmon wood and a Pro V1 and a modern driver, and sort of crossed over with them. And on a 6 iron, the Ballata to the Pro V1 was 15 yards. With a
15 yards. Yep.
With a persimmon driver and a Pro V1, you could still get the 150 TrackMan efficiency numbers that you could with the modern driver, but if you missed it, it fell off a cliff. But a Pro V1 with the modern driver went 45 yards shorter. Sorry, a Ballata with the modern driver went 45 yards shorter.
Yes.
So straight away, you're
yards.
60 yards on the hole difference, just from the ball.
Yes, with two. And that's just with a par 4.
Yeah.
You're probably 70, 80 yards on a par 5 shorter because you're using a wood. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
How technology has taken up. I now hit the ball 275, say. And before I was saying with that club, with this driver here, I hit the ball 270. I'm hitting the ball further now than I did in so-called my heyday. Purely because of the club, the shaft, and the ball. Not me, I can assure you, it's not me.
I think one of the questions that popped up earlier was what was your driver swing speed, and so at the moment it's sort of 105, 106. Don't know what it was back in.
On a good day, Simon. Thanks. That's with the following win. Thanks. I would say 105 would be what I was. I think when the first TrackMans came out, when I went down to the range in Carlsbad, I think I was about 110, 111. In those days, I was obviously a little more flexible than I was. I was a little more, everything moved a wee bit quicker than it does at 56. I was when I was with the Order Merits, it was age 30 through 37. So you're talking 23 years ago here. So things, physically things don't always go forward. So I'm hitting the ball further now than I was then. Yeah, purely through technology.
Yeah. So actually, you mentioned about the box screws earlier on. One of the points that I picked up, looking over a bit of coverage, sort of prepping for this, on your third PGA Championship at Wentworth, that win, in the coverage it said the week before you'd switched to box screws on your irons. And I was wondering whether that made you approach the course at Wentworth differently than you would have done before, and how easy it was to transition mid-season.
Good for you, yeah. I think what happened was that May at Wentworth, when it was played, it's now played in September, of course, now, the PGA, and probably a lot later this year. What I was trying to do was to stop the ball on the greens quicker than I was, right? If I happened to miss the fairway, I was in the semi or just in the light rough there, I could get more action on the ball with the box grooves. Now, what happened was, it was the X12s in those days. Hang on a minute, I've got another prop. Hang on. Here we are. X12, look at these. Look, now that was the club that I won 99, 2000. I think it was 98, 99 when these first came out, right? 22 years ago. The X12, right? Now, these weren't the pro model. This was the normal model. They had a pro model, which was less offset. I always liked a little bit of offset. I always have had. We'll go into that later. But this was the X12 that I won the PGA Championships with. Great club. Great club. And for those of you who still have these in the bag, I'm sure a few of you do and a few of you around. If you haven't tried it for a few years, try it. Bloody good club, this. Very good club. There's nothing wrong with this club at all. Technology has moved on with drivers and with the ball, but with irons, I don't feel it has the same. This was a fantastic set of golf clubs, the X12, and the non-pro one. Yes, I wanted to, because what happens in London, May time, April is usually, although there's showers, you can get a dry spring, and Wentworth could play quite fast, quite hard and bouncy, and I wanted more control. That was the only reason I did that. Off the fairway, I think a strike with you can tell me more technically, but a strike with a V groove compared to a box groove is very similar from a tight lie.
Yeah.
The difference is when you're just off the fairway, just in the semi or in the rough. One, it doesn't go as far, the box grooves, because there's more spin on the ball, but also you've got more control, and that's what I was after. Just in case I happened to miss the odd fairway, I was getting more control with the second shots to get closer to the pin.
Yeah.
That was all. That was the only reason I did it.
Okay, so actually quite an interesting one, and that one of the other bits we were looking at in terms of bag setup. So is obviously you change those to get more control on the firmer conditions, but when you look at things like the Open versus some of US Open venues and the different kinds of course style and conditions that you're playing in, how much did you change your bag makeup for specific courses or tournaments?
There was only one course really that I dropped the 2-iron, because that's what we used to use in those days. We all had a 2-iron in the bag. Some of us had a 1-iron. I remember Nick Price had a 1-iron for many years. I think Faldo did for years. Woozy as well, good iron players. But Augusta changed things. You had to come into the greens a little bit higher, with a little more height. I remember at Augusta using a forward. Now that's a club that is not really heard of anymore. You know, you go 1-3 and hybrid really nowadays. Hybrids weren't really around in those times in the mid-90s. So what I did was I put a forward in so that holes like the second at Augusta, the 13th and the 15th, that I could go into those greens if I had the length to get there in 2. I could get a higher flight in the ball, therefore it could stop. There was no point in coming into Augusta with a flat 2-iron, a flat 1-iron, no chance. Yes, you could hit the green, but it wasn't on it for long. It was over the back, and in pro golf, you go over the back, it's a lot worse than usually short. Yes, 15 and 13 have creeks or ponds in front of them, but if you go over the back in pro golf, you're in big trouble, because the green usually is now sloping away from you. The green is set towards you for the shot. If you go over the back, it's nasty. So that was the only course I really changed equipment for. I wasn't much into the bounce of clubs. You know, people tended to change the bounce of the clubs when they were playing at a St Andrews type of firm, St Andrews, where you didn't want the ball to bounce and then go on, not catching the bottom of the club. I didn't change my wedges that much. I only changed really the 2-iron went from the bag at Augusta, and in came the forward. Yeah.
So would you have, rather than using a different bounce for, say, a US Open with a thicker rough and then an Open Championship with a, would you change your technique to accommodate the conditions? Because I think a lot of players now would just take a different grind and not change anything. But
yeah, they would. I mean, the grinds are more available. The clubs are made with, you know, Phil Mickelson's 64 has got no bounce on it at all. You know, so he can actually hit his nose with the damn thing. We didn't tend to go to that length in the mid 90s. Yes, you adapted. You know, on a links course, you didn't try and get underneath the ball because the bounce would affect it. So you ran the ball with a 7-iron, 8-iron. You know, you kept the ball on the ground more on a links course. On a US Open course, yes. You know, I always found that a lot of these clubs were designed in America for American conditions, which are generally watered, artificial conditions, softer. So they were making clubs with the bounce that was set for really American conditions, more so than the British harder, firmer conditions. Therefore, yes, sometimes we grind the bounce off a wee bit. Not generally. It was okay, but it was easier to play in the US Open with those clubs than it was transferring it to the British Open. In those days, it was called that. Yeah.
Did you ever? There's always pictures of, you know, Seve or Faldo or Norman doing little tinkering with their own equipment. Did you ever do any of your own? Did you ever grind any of your own wedges? And
I'd have broken them, Simon. I'd have made a complete hash of it and probably injured myself. You know, cut myself. No, that was for professionals to do. The times that I did, but I didn't really, you know, vary the clubs. You know, a new club for a tournament, I didn't really feel that was a thing. I felt I was practicing in competition, which is something I was told never to do. Bring your game with you. Do not practice in competition. So don't bring a club out just for this particular week. The forward I practiced many times. It was always, I took it everywhere just in case there was flight, you know, that. But I didn't change my wedges because the feel, the shaft, although people said it was the same, it just something didn't feel right with it, you know. So I went with what I was more confident with, really. Yeah.
So I think you mentioned earlier with the X12s and things, the offset and the iron style that you enjoyed playing. You through your career, you've tended to play the slightly more forgiving. I mean, the ones behind me on the wall here, the slightly more forgiving style,
Yeah, well, there you are.
a little more cavity back.
Yeah.
What was it in particular that took you down that route, or preference-wise? But also, they've always been sort of said that they get less consistency, get flyers out of them. Is that something you've noticed with them over the years, or is that more the conditions that you're playing in, the grasses, rather than the heads themselves?
I think you know, again, in my day, I was with Callaway mostly through my career. You know, I joined Callaway. In the end, I won the first 2 Orders of Merit with Wilson equipment, Wilson Sporting Goods, and then moved to Callaway from '94 onwards, really. And their clubs were very much offset. You saw the X12s I produced there. Even the ones before that, the original Big Bertha irons were very much offset before the X12, X14 still, and Callaway still make offset clubs. In fact, hang on a minute. I've got another prop here. Got lots of props. Right. This is a club that I won a lot of tournaments with. Now, this is the Callaway Razor X XF. Extra forgiveness. Now, you talked about, you know, look at the size of the sole, the width of the sole, and the huge offset, right? Now, there's 2 things I use that for. One was forgiveness, extra forgiveness, okay? To me, why not, right? That particular club was a great club. I've got it again here. It was a cast head, but it was a forged face, right? The face was forged, and it was a cast head. Perfect combination, really, the forged head. So that's what I used for consistency. I always felt game improvement. My game needed to improve. Everybody's does. I found it very much more difficult to hit the sweet spot consistently with a bladed club. I mean, some of these bladed clubs that we were using in those days, my God, I mean, you remember the Maxfly Australian blade, the McGregor, oh my God, I mean, you could cut butter with them, yes? Tiny blades that if you didn't hit the sweet spot, no chance. That sweet spot on that club was huge. Well, why not? You know, why not? And I felt that the Game Improvement Club gave me confidence over the ball, and also the offset. I was a fader of the golf ball. Always my swing was just adapted to fade the ball. I went outside to in, cut across the ball slightly. Hey presto, the ball faded. It was a natural thing that I had in my swing. The offset enabled me, because I was coming across the ball and not closing the face yet, the offset allowed me that hair, and we're talking 2 or 3 millimeters of time to enable me to close the face at impact. And that's why I always used offset, to stop me over fading the ball. It's like anything under pressure. If you fade the ball, it tends to turn into a wee bit of a slice. If you draw the ball, it tends to turn into a little bit of a hook under pressure. So that's why I use the offset, to stop the slice becoming a part of my game, and it enabled me to hit the ball straighter, because the club would just have that extra little bit of time to square up as I came into the ball, and that's what it was. So that's why I used offset, and that's why I used so-called game improvement clubs. The clubs behind you there are on the wall. There's a set of my clubs that I handed into you. You just move, there you go. That's me with Andy Prodger in the day. Alistair, my caddy, was injured, and that's me just having beaten Scott Hoke in 2002 in the singles at the Ryder Cup. And that was the irons I used. They were Big Bertha irons. Big Bertha irons. Hey, there was nothing wrong with them. I was 7 under for the day. Come
As I
on.
can say, give him an
There was
absolute
nothing wrong
walloping.
with them. Well, yeah, I won. But at the same time, the forgiveness it gave me, the confidence it gave me over the ball, and because especially this one forged faces as well, it gave me the consistency of distance. I love them and still do. If I'm looking for a set of irons, I'm always looking for a hair of offset. And it's interesting when you talk to Langer, who I have great respect for on our tour and winning still, you see his bag. It's full of offset irons. Full of offset irons. He likes the time to let that club just square up at impact. And it makes a big, big difference. Yeah.
So are there any, there are a few memorable shots that you've hit in your career. The ones that spring to mind for me are the driver off the deck in Dubai, and actually a couple of Ryder Cup shots. One, the first tee shot on the single Sunday at the Belfry, that 3-wood that you hit a country mile down the first. And then the tee shot at Valderrama, the 18th at Valderrama in the singles in '97. Sort of shots that immediately sprung to mind of me as sort of really key ones. What are your most memorable ones? And would you play them differently now? For example, like the driver off the deck. Would the current equipment make you play those shots very differently than you did?
Oh, very, very differently. It was set up for me. If I bring my driver out again and show you, this is my driver. In fact, I haven't got it out its trophy cabinet for long. I thought it was my 3-wood at first. It's that small, it's incredible, But you see, if I can show you there, that's better. You see the curvature of the bottom of this club, right? The warbird shape, if you like, the old Big Bertha shape. This club was more like a 2-wood, and it enabled me to hit the ball off the fairway with it. Nowadays, it's a much flatter, the bigger head, much flatter head, and less loft on the clubs doesn't allow you really to hit the driver off the fairway as much as you did, right? And also 3-woods have become much, much stronger anyway, so there's no need to really hit the driver off the fairway. But you see, the way that's designed enables you to get to the bottom. It's more like an iron, really, and that allowed me. So that was shot of the year in 1996, and if anyone asks me is the best shot I've ever hit under pressure, I'll tell a story. I was one ahead of Miguel Angel Jimenez, right? I was 18 under, he was 17 under. We were 3 ahead of the pack. So it was between us on the last hole. And for those of you who know the Dubai Desert Classic over the years, you have to hook the drive and then you have to play over a lake. And the wind is usually coming from the Persian Gulf, which means it's in the evening. And we were playing at 5 o'clock. So it was into the wind. I was behind him off the tee. He was just ahead of me. He was about 10 yards ahead of me off the tee. And I'd hit the fairway. And I said to her, I'm a 1 ahead, right? And it was 200, and I'll never forget it, 228 or something to carry the lake, right? 228. Now, nowadays, my God, that's Rory's forearm, right? But we won't go there, okay? In 1996, with a Ballata ball and me hitting it, I couldn't get there with a 3-wood. I couldn't carry it with a 3-wood. So what do we do? So I had my 6-iron in my hand to lay up and make my birdie the way that we thought we could do, then wedge in. 6-iron in my hand. Then Miguel Jimenez made a mistake. He drew out his 3-wood as I was waiting to hit my second shot. So I knew he was going for it. So I said to Alistair, hang on, I said, he's going for this. He makes 4, we've laid up, come on. Can we make it if I hit my driver? And he goes, oh God, right, okay. Yes, you can make it, but it's got to come off, provided you make contact, proper contact. I mean, we're talking maximum contact here. So I said, okay, well, if this works, we'll finish it off here. So I aimed a wee bit left for safety, and it did come off the middle. Believe me, it came off the middle, and it just brushed the surface. It was as perfect as I could hit a shot, and it landed really soft and went to about 8 foot, and that was it. It was finished then. I had 2 putts for it, but he went for it. He still went for it, put it in the back bunker, and got up and down for his 4. So you can't knock him. You know, he did go for it, so it proved that I needed my 4. And I don't usually take risks. That was one of the risk-reward thing that paid off. It was a reward, and it was a delight, you know. And that club benefited me, you know. The other one you talk about, Valderrama, 1997. Yeah, you know. I think it was one of these Cannon Shot of the Years again. I don't know how, but playing against Scott Hoke, you know, he had the honour. He just won 17 to go back to all square. I couldn't afford to lose the game. It was the last game on the course. Seve, God, it was his birthday yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah. You know, and God rest him. He was running around going bananas, going berserk, and it was raining, and I had to hit this shot. And hang on, I've got another one here. Hang on. You talk about my driver. This club here, now then. The Callaway Steelhead, yes?
Yeah.
The Steelhead Big Bertha 3-wood. What a club. And this was the one I hit in 97. Off the tee. Again, it has the red and silver shaft. The RCH shaft. RCH, for those of you who had Callaway clubs, that stands for Richard C. Helmstetter, who was a snooker cue designer in the days. He made snooker cues for Stephen Henry and Steve Davis, and he was an expert in vibration of snooker cues and how it worked. Turned his hand to golf, and Ely Callaway hired him, and he started the RCH golf shafts that were on every Callaway club, you know. But this Steelhead club, this was a great 3-wood as well in its day. And I hit this club off the tee at Valderrama in 97. You see, God, it's been hit a few times off the toe, a wee bit toey. Sorry for that. That's my cutting across it, right? If I was a drawer of the ball, you'd find the marks a little more towards the heel. I was a fader of the ball, so you see the marks are slightly towards the toe because I'm cutting across it a little bit too much, possibly.
Not a lot, though, really, is it? Not a lot.
But you see the bevel bottom. You see the curved bottom. Great design of a golf club. That Callaway Steelhead, and it's still in a number of people's bags today. Freddie Couples kept one in there for many years. I kept that I was in my bag for about 10 years. That club, and not many drivers or 3-woods remain in people's bags for 10 years now. You know, but I hit the fairway with it. And as soon as I hit the fairway with it, he hadn't hit the fairway, Scott Hoke. I hit the fairway with it, and it was the end of the game because he couldn't get on in 2, and I could, and I was, you know, all they needed was a half. So again, it was fairways. Yeah. And those 2 shots, it's interesting. Those 2 shots I hit there, both were on the fairway. 96's shot at Dubai, and the shot there, and it goes back to what we're saying earlier on. Fairways, fairways, fairways. You know, amazing. Yeah.
So, one of the guys here said, over the course of time, how well have you known your own specs for your clubs, and how much have they changed in the last 10 years?
Well, since I met you and James at Precision Golf, it's changed quite a bit. Specs of clubs. I think you were given a set of clubs and you used them, didn't you? Really, in the days. I mean, I was playing in the Walker Cup and I didn't know. If you said what degrees loft my 7-iron was in the Walker Cup in 85 or 87 at Sunningdale, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I couldn't have told you. I do now. You know, 32 degrees my 7-iron. I do now. Yeah. And I know the lie as well. So, you know, we were given sets of clubs and you played with them. Sometimes you liked a particular club, didn't you? You know, from the bag, you liked a 7-iron, you liked an 8-iron. Probably it was a wee bit strong, you know, and therefore you liked it. It went further. You know, it wasn't actually part of the set. You know, sometimes you buy a set of clubs off the shelf, and you've got 3 5-irons, right? The 4-iron's weak, the 5-iron's normal, and the 6-iron is strong. Suddenly you've got 3 5-irons in the bag, you know? So, yes, you're given a set of clubs, but you don't know until you come to someone like yourself for precision golf who can actually tell you, no, that's not right. That's 2 degrees weak, or whatever. And you think, oh, that's why it's not going as far, or that's why it's going a bit high, or whatever. So it's vital to get to know your equipment. I know my equipment now much more than I did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, there's a question come through from Nick Scratton, who's with one of the manufacturers, used to be with us several years back as well, and said, what was there, but what was the sort of the old school club fitting on tour? Was there any, or is it try this and see if you like it?
Yes, there was. We had the Mizuno trailer, the Barry Willett trailer came out when I sort of started the tour around about 90, I think, 88, 87. 87, I started playing on the tour in 88 because I went to the tour school in 87. 87, they were still sending the caddies down in the range to pick up the golf balls. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a range as such. I think you got golf balls, but no one's picking them up. Mm. So the caddies had to pick them up and bring them back. And that was a dangerous game. 88 was the first time that Volvo became involved in the tour, and they put money into a range. And it was the first time we actually could hit balls proper, you know, and then not have to go and pick them up. So, I think the Mizuno trailer did a great job on tour. It was the only one on tour. It serviced every manufacturer, whether it was with Callaway or TaylorMade or Ping or whoever it was at the time, Wilson. It serviced all those, including Mizuno as well. And everybody used it. Obviously, it was quite busy because you had 144 guys with the one trailer. So imagine 20 guys wanting something done at the same time. You know, it got quite busy. They did a great job. They did. And they were very, very busy. But that was all we had. Now if you go to Wentworth or, the PGA, every manufacturer tends to have his own trailer. And not just a trailer, a magnificent office, of 5 or 6 guys working there, putting the clubs together for you, getting them exactly the way you want them. So it has changed, obviously for the better. The costs have spiraled, obviously, but at the same time, if you win with a particular set of clubs, well, it helps the manufacturer. Of course it does. There's
actually a question from Kevin Conkergood, who sent through. That's a great name, isn't it? He sent through the client of ours and sent through last night. He said, at any point in your career, did you use equipment you didn't really care for due to contractual obligations?
It's a good question. Yes and no. Yes and no is the answer. No, because, in the Callaway days, and then I moved to Yonex for a while, the clubs were really trying to produce clubs for me. Difficult to say, but yes and no. Sometimes manufacturers were trying to push the modern club on you, and you see by my clubs here that, I used that steelhead and my driver for 10 years. Now, Callaway had produced, they were feeling an awful lot better clubs, the Great Big Bertha, the biggest Big Bertha. They went on to the titanium stuff, into the FX series. They went into all sorts. And I used the older ones. I'm not so sure Callaway were too impressed with me because he wanted to use the modern equipment. But sometimes I felt, and I'm being very honest here, that sometimes it's for marketing sense. Sometimes a club is brought out, it's said it's better. If you like the clubs that you like, there's Steve Stricker there on tour there. I played with him in the US Senior Open. He won it handsomely. He shot 62, 64 with me the first 2 days and played fantastic golf with Titleist irons that were 12 years old.
He's got some old 735s, I think. Yeah, with the red badge in the middle at the back.
Yeah. 12 plus years old, I personally have been using my legacies, my Callaway legacies since 2010. We've now gone on to, we're trying the PXGs, as you know, we're trying the Ping I210s, the PXG Generation 3s, to compare with the Callaways to see what's improved or the consistency of distance and how I can improve through technology now. But no, I think I was one of the ones that stood fast and said, no, I'm happy with what I've got, thank you very much. I like your new equipment, I think it's great. But I'm happier and more confident with what I'm using now. And I think that was a benefit to my game. A lot of people change because it's new, and I mean, TaylorMade, they still say the M2, don't they? And I'm being very honest here. I'm not saying, but because I'm not with any company at this stage, so I can be free to say what I'd like to say. I've got 14 free clubs in the bag right now. So what I can do is say that the M2 driver that many of you might have is still reputed to be TaylorMade's best driver.
Yeah, the first
And I'm
generation is
sure
still
you've
very
tested the new
popular.
ones against, yes, a very popular driver indeed. I'm sure people using some of the older Callaway drivers. Some people prefer the Epic driver or the Rogue driver to the new Epic Flash driver. Or the new, now I forget its name, the new Callaway one. Come on.
Maverick. The Maverick. Yeah.
Thank you. Maverick. So the new Maverick drivers come out. Some people are still on tour using the Epic Flash, or the Rogue drivers. I can say the same for Ping. The i410 is a great driver. A number of people use the i400 still, or the i410. It's just preference, really, to what people want to use. So I was fortunate. Good question. Sometimes you were given this club saying it was better. I tried it and handed it back.
Has it actually been quite sort of liberating to now not be contractually linked in any shape or form? I know for us being able to test things out, it's been always just a bit more fun because we can go places we couldn't do in the past.
Yes. Well, being independent as you are, you can see a person swing and produce a club that would suit him, being independent, and I think that's a fantastic way to go, as opposed to saying, no, you've got to use this particular model. And I think no, I don't feel that really. It was just that the models produced, I just didn't feel that sometimes they were as good as the marketeers said they were. Yeah.
So a bit of a slightly more fun one. This one, a bit of a loaded question from James. What's the strangest hole-in-one prize you've ever received?
I've been very lucky. I've had 17 holes in one in my so-called career, 8 as an amateur and 9 as a pro. Now that's more than average, but you hear some people, my God, there's 20, 30 holes in one, But when you think of Seve only having had 1, 17's okay, I suppose. Of the 9 pro, because that's where you win the prizes, I suppose, the 9 pro prizes, I think I've won. I think the sponsor or the promoter gives you a bottle of champagne behind the 18th green, the hole in one. So I've won 8 of them and a car. I won a car, a Volvo car, when I holed in one at Mount Juliet in one of the first world events as it was trying to be known as then, way back when. But nothing really strange. No, I wouldn't say a car was strange, or I wouldn't say a bottle of champagne was strange.
Wasn't it? Was there one in the US?
I got the honour off the next tee.
Okay.
That's what I did get every time. I've had one in the US, It was at the Bell South Open the week before the Masters, the 16th hole. We play it now, Sugarloaf, TPC Sugarloaf, the 16th hole. We play it on the Champions Tour now, and a hole in 8-iron down the hill there. That was only one in the US I've had, yeah.
Okay. There are a couple I want to get to. There are a few Ryder Cup things coming in, so I wanted to get onto some of those. And Peter Cantor had just said any kind of Seve Ryder Cup stories. But one of the ones that I had in terms of Ryder Cup pressure is different to anything else was that first tee shot versus winning putt. How obviously you being sort of the opening match a lot of the times had the opening tee shot of the whole tournament a few times. How nerve-wracking is that relative to standing over the putt to win the whole thing?
I think opening the Ryder Cup is as bad as it gets. Yeah. I can feel for people that I've seen in sport, and I witnessed them opening serve in the final of Wimbledon, about to go into the blocks for 100 meters in the Olympic final, for instance. Stuff like that. I can relate to because I've been there. Yeah. And as far as I can see, the opening shot in the Ryder Cup to start it off, which means you've got to be in America, because they get the honour in Europe, so we get the honour in America. And I've done it twice, in 95, and then the next time in 99. And 95 I knew it was my shot. I was playing with Faldo, and we're playing against Corey Pavin and Tom Lehman at Oak Hill in 95. And the first hole at Oak Hill is a downhill right to left, which is not my favourite shot at all. If it was left to right, I'd have loved it. Right to left. I'll never forget, I came onto the tee with Nick, and I tried to put the ball down on the tee, and I couldn't see the tee markers. There were so many people on the tee. Lanny Watkins was the American captain. Bernard Gallagher was our captain. They were standing on the tee, not knowing they were actually ahead of the marker, so I couldn't see the marker. They had to back off 2 yards for me to actually put the ball down, because I wanted to put the ball down on the right-hand side of the tee, right to left shot. I needed all the help I could get to get as far down that left-hand side as possible. Couldn't see the tee. There was so many people on the tee. It was unbelievable. I hadn't slept for 2 nights thinking about this particular shot. I'd hit an extra 3 or 4 drivers on the range just to prepare myself for this very shot. I mean, you don't want to mess up. As a professional golfer in the Ryder Cup, having won the Order of Merit now, I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, yeah? You put the ball on the tee in the Ryder Cup, to start it off, having had a 2-year wait for it. We'd lost, remember, in 91 and 93. So we wanted this back. This was serious. We couldn't lose 3 times in a row. This was getting serious for us. We had to win. So I put the ball on the tee. Nick comes up to me. It's a 3-wood, Monty. He says, it's a 3-wood. I go, oh, for Christ's sake. I said, thanks a lot. I said, look, look, leave me alone, sort of thing, almost. But because he was number 1 in the world at the time, because he was Nick Faldo, and I was very much his junior, I thought, God, okay. 3-wood it is. Last thing you want to do is peg it down, isn't it? Tee it down on the ground and try and hit a 3-wood, because things can go wrong with a 3-wood off the tee that they don't really with a driver. Yeah. You've got more leeway with a driver. Anyway, I was lucky. I managed to put a decent swing in it, and make contact was number 1, and it went down the fairway okay. But that was, even thinking about it now, you get sweaty palms. You think about it. You put yourself back in that position, and we're talking 25 years ago, and that was as bad as it gets. Yeah. But once I'd done it once, I could cope. 99 was okay. I could cope with 99. And then, of course, in the singles in 2002 and 2006, I was put out first in the singles. That was quite daunting, 2002. We were 8-all going into the singles. Again, we'd lost in 99, so we wanted it back. Of course, 2002 was delayed because of September 11, you know, and we decided to, or Sam did, he said he'd put his strength at the top to get blue on the board early. That was his game. And Americans made a big error. They put their strength at the back. I mean, it would never happen now, but you think of Davis Love, Phil Mickelson, and Tiger Woods were 10, 11, 12. Now, it's like, remember, I think Portugal left Ronaldo for the 5th penalty, you know, and it never happened. It never got to him. And this is what happened at 2002. It never got to them. Love, Mickelson and Woods, their top 3 players at the time, didn't count. Washout, because it happened by then. Curtis Strange, unfortunately, you know, in those days thinking we'll leave our strength at the back just in case. Sam put it up front. And since then, it's been up front. The strength's been up front. So, hey presto, because I don't know where I was in the world, I was quite high, I suppose. I was out first, so he put me out first. And it was weird, really. I was playing Scott Hoke, and difficult guy to play, actually, Scott Hoke, because he was a bit like myself. He hit fairways and greens. He wasn't giving you much. You had to earn the win. Playing someone like a Mickelson, you could have a hole off because he's going to make a 7, you know? You might make 3 threes in a row after that, but he gives you a hole off. Scott Hoke was a bit like me. He didn't give you anything. You had to earn it. So I knew it was going to be a tough game. My first drive, I was so pumped up. The adrenaline was flowing it was ridiculous. I hit my drive, as you said earlier on, 308 yards. Now, it wasn't windy. I've never hit a 3-wood 308 yards ever on a fairway. The Belfry, the first fairway is not downhill. It's a little bit downhill, but the fairway's flat. So I never forget, I got to my second shot and I had 120 yards in or something. I didn't know, 110 yards in. I didn't know what I was doing. So I said to my caddy, it was Andy Prodger at the time. Alistair was injured. And I said to him, well, what are we going to hit here? I said, yes, it should be a sort of wedge or sand wedge, 110, but I don't know what to hit. How far is this going to go? If the 3-wood's gone 308 yards, is my sand wedge suddenly going to go 150 here? You know, I don't know what's going to happen. So that's why I left my second shot short, because I was frightened to hit it at all. I sort of decelerated on it and left it short. And then, you know, okay, the putt went in and that was fine. But the first tee, that was really big. I hadn't foreseen the singles, especially, that there's no one else on the course. There's no other game on the course for another 12 minutes. I think we're given 12 minutes leeway between the Ryder Cup singles. Garcia was behind me, number 2. So for 12 minutes, everybody is watching one game. So all the stands are full around the Belfry. They've been in since 8 o'clock. This was at 11:15, my start time in the singles, first off. All the stands were full. The players' room was full. The range was full with other players now coming out to practice. And all the big screens were out there, so there was no one else to watch.
The only thing I will have to say is we're about to get to the hour mark and we'll get cut off. We're about to hit the hour mark and we're going to get cut off.
Oh, are we? Sorry.
Quick one though.
What I'm trying to say is that it was. Sorry, Simon. It was tension packed. There's nothing else to go.
If you got time?
It was something different.
If you've got time, we'll relog back in
Sure.
and do another 10-15 minutes or so, just to tie up a couple of other questions.
Definitely.
So rejoin us very quickly. We'll just.
Sure, Simon. No problem at all.
We'll see you in a mo.
I'm sure you've got time in your hands, or you should have if you're at home. Yeah.
Jesse was saying about being the only match on the course, so everyone's there.
Yeah. So everybody was watching the one game. And it finally hit me that, oh my God, you know, there's a lot of people watching this, not just in Europe, but in America as well. So it does get to you. That's what I'm trying to say, is that when you're off first, for that split second, I was loving it when Garcia was announced on the tee, so I could have, I had a friend behind me who could actually, you know, take a bit of pressure off me. But I'll never forget the roar. It's the loudest cheer I've ever heard on a golf course. When I've done something, when the putt went in at the first in 2002. Because then I realised that no one else was watching any other game. It wouldn't have been so loud because there were other games to watch. But because they were just watching me, it was very loud when the putt went in, and I was delighted to see it drop. It was going a little bit fast, to be honest. And thank God it hit the middle of the hole, because I don't think I'd have missed the return. But it went in, and it all worked out for Sam, and I was delighted for him. You know, that he gambled. He gambled with what he did to put his strength out first, and got the blue on the board, gave us momentum, and it worked for him. I was delighted for him, because he'd worked not just 2 years for this Ryder Cup, but 3, because he had the extra year. You know, that the team had to be the same as it was. We had to play the same. So it was a great Ryder Cup, that 2002.
As you mentioned earlier, playing with partnering Nick Faldo, and one of our clients, Peter Kent, has asked about sort of what was partnering Nick like. And actually, one of the other questions I got regarding equipment side of it as well is that when you were playing foursomes in particular, whose ball did you? And I know with Nick you played his ball, but generally speaking, whose ball did you play?
Yes.
And was that very tough to adapt to just for the 1 week of the year?
Not really. I mean, I used the Ballesteros Titleist ball and then moved on to the Pro V1, and then, you know, for a time before the Callaway balls came out, you know, your Rule 35 ball was a great ball that Callaway produced, and so I used a varying ball. So I tended to use, in foursomes play, I used my partner's ball, whatever he used, whether it be Faldo or Langer or Harrington, Clark, whoever I played with in my days, you know, God, I forget them all, in the Ryder Cup. Faldo was interesting because Bernard Gallagher was the captain, and he had an idea that after 91, in 93, that Faldo and I should play together at the Belfry. And all four matches, foursomes 4-ball, foursomes 4-ball. So it was strange that this was in September, so about June, a big package arrives at my house. 50 dozen. That's a lot of balls. 50 dozen practice balls, okay. 50 dozen Rexstar golf balls with the word Faldo written on them. Now, Rexstar, you correct me if I'm wrong, they used to be this sort of pre-Bridgestone type ball, you know, that was made for Faldo. But at the time, that was the ball he was using. Quite similar to a Ballata 90 or whatever the case may be of the day, or just the first Pro V1s that came out. 50 dozen balls arrived from Bernard Gallagher, not Faldo. It came from Bernard Gallagher, the captain. So it was quite obvious what that meant. Monty, you're playing with Faldo, and by the way, you're using his golf ball as well. I mean, it was like, okay, fine. So here's me using or practicing a little bit with his, God, I think I've still got a few of them upstairs, I think, his Rexstar golf balls, but that was what I was told to do, yeah. And it was always a little bit odd, you know, to use a ball. I'm sure the Americans must feel the same when they're using a ball with Tiger on the side of it. When you play with Tiger in the foursomes, his ball is generally used. And I've got this ball that says Faldo on it in the Ryder Cup. You don't want to lose it, you know. You don't want to do something stupid and hit it in a bush, or you know, it's got his name in it. He was number 1 in the world at the time, and he was my senior partner. So that's the equipment. The ball was always the one that my partner used. Langer, I used to use a Titleist ball with Bernhard. Harrington again was Titleist. I think Clark might have been something different, I'm not sure, and Westwood, I think, I'm not sure. So there was a few of them that I played with, but always I tended to use their ball. It was easier for them, really. Yeah.
And then just because it got asked earlier on, best Seve Ryder Cup. Any really good Seve stories from the Ryder Cup? Probably quite a few.
Well, you know, he was supposed to be, what? He would have been 63 yesterday, you know, and what, 6.5 years my senior. And he was always someone I looked up to, you know, and it was a pleasure and a privilege now when you look back on it to have walked the fairways with him, to play with him, to witness the skill and the passion of him. And I think that word passion sprung into his captaincy in the Ryder Cup in '97. The whole thing about going to Spain was because of Seve. It was the first time it was taken away from Britain and it was taken to the continent, Spain. King Carlos was there. It was for Seve. And we felt that somehow we couldn't, the result was almost written in stone before we, you know, we couldn't really do anything but win for him, you know. And Americans had a great team, well captained by Tom Kite as well. Probably had a better team than we did. But we had Seve. We were 1-2 up. But he was only, and people forget this, he was the youngest captain ever. He was only 41 in 1997. Now the captains, I was 47. Generally, 47 to 50 tends to be about the... Seve was the youngest captain ever at 41, which meant really he wanted still to play. Seve wanted to play. So that was a problem. I remember in the foursomes we were playing, Langer and I were coming down the last hole against Jeff Maggott and Jim Furyk, and we're 1 up. And I hit a terrible tee shot outright behind a tree. So, of course, before we could get there, Langer and I, well, Langer was 20 yards behind me, of course. Seve had driven his buggy up to the ball and was wanting to play the shot for Langer. And he was behind a tree and he was having a go and trying to figure out what he could do. And if Langer could hit a sort of 5-iron with a high draw that was then cutting, dipping, and then up again at the end, he could just about make the front bunker. So by the time Seve was doing all this, Langer had chipped out sideways, and that was the only play. I'm not saying Seve was a nuisance, don't get me wrong, but he was wanting to play, and he wanted to play the shots, and I wish he had. The one real time sprung to mind when I was playing with Darren Clark in the foursome, the 4-ball, and against a very difficult opponents of Freddie Couples and Davis Love. They'd won the World Cup together 4 times in a row. They were really, I suppose, you know, America's top twosome. This was Darren's first Ryder Cup match, 97, first ever game in the Ryder Cup, Valderrama. And Seve came up, and Darren had outdriven me at 17. It was this famous par 5 that Seve had designed. And in practice, if you've got 2 minutes in practice, we were playing together. There was Woozy, Faldo, Langer, and myself in a 4-ball in practice, yeah? And we all played the 17th. We're all walking to the 18th tee. Now, some of us have played it differently. Woozy was longer than us, so he could go for it in 2. Faldo and I played it, and Langer, I think, played it conservatively. We laid up. Seve ran to us on the 18th tee. No, I'm not happy with the way you played that hole, he says. Go back and play it again. Now, not me included, but you've got Woozy, Langer, and Faldo all past number 1s in the world, yeah, and myself added on, and you go, he's just told these 3 guys to go and play this hole again. So off we go. We played the hole again, and Seve watched it with us and the way we played it and all that. So we got, bloody hell, this is wow, you know. So here we go. So we're all square. Clark and I against Davis Love and Freddie Couples. Clark's hit it further than I have, and so has Love and Couples, obviously. So I'm first to go, and I've no option. 7-iron layup, right? So I've laid up. I'm okay. I'm in play. He goes over to Darren and tells him to hit a 3-iron onto the green, because he sees Couples and Love doing the same thing. Darren doesn't want to, and I don't want Darren to either. He's in the semi-rough. He doesn't want to, and I don't want Darren to either. And I fathered Darren, having had a few Ryder Cup experiences to this stage. Darren, it was his first Ryder Cup match, and I felt that I was his senior at this stage, and we were doing okay. We were all square through 17 against America's top couple, and I thought, right, no, Seve, don't tell him to do this. Don't tell him to do this. And of course, unfortunately, Darren hit his 3-iron, and of course, it went in the water. He didn't quite catch it the way Darren normally would. It went in the water. Now we're down to 1, and that's what I always said in 4-ball golf: keep 2 balls in play. 2 chances better than 1. So I'm on my own now. Love went in the water as well. He went for it, put it in the water. Couples went big. Now, as I said earlier on, over the back end, pro golf's not good, especially 17 at Ballesteros. So Seve comes up to me on the 17th fairway, up this horrible distance to go, 58 yards. Now, for your customers and clients who obviously know the game well, that's a terrible distance. It's neither one or the other. It's not a full shot. It's not a half shot. You can decelerate on it. I'd much prefer if it was 100 or it was 20, not in the middle. 58 yards, horrible distance. So Seve's there, of course, his buggy's parked next to my ball before I get there. So he says, it's all hands, Monty. It's all hands, all hands. I thought, oh, God. Okay, yeah. I almost gave the club to him and said, look, Seve, you play it because you're an awful lot better than I am at this. This is my weakness here. Can you please play this and everyone turn away and not look? He said, it's all hands and arms. Don't use the legs, all hands and arms. Go. So, and I regret it now. I was quite rude to him, but I had to say, look, Seve, back off. I'm sorry. I know you want to play. You're only 41. You're better at it than I am. I know you are, but I've got to do this. And I'm bricking it here. This is bad news. If I mess up this hole, we're 1 down playing the last. We can't win. So anyway, luckily I hit it to about 8 foot above the hole. Couples chipped down past the hole, missed the putt. So I had this right to lefter down the hill to win the hole. Hold it, 1 up. We halved the last, and we beat them 1 up. Was it because of Seve? Was it, I don't know. I mean, God, looking up to heavens at him, and, God rest him, but he wanted to play, and that was his passion. And that was who he was passionate. And you saw when we won the Ryder Cup, then it was raining, heavily raining, but he held the Ryder Cup as if it was a child, as if it was part of him, and he was the reason. He was a friend, he was a colleague, he was a passionate player, but he was the reason that the Ryder Cup is what it is today. Without Seve, without the passion of Seve, the Ryder Cup would not be the event it is today. There was one person that made that Ryder Cup, and I'm sorry to Faldo, to Langer, to Woozy, to Lyle, to Olazabal, to myself in many ways. Seve was our leader, and 63 we would have been yesterday. Greatly missed.
I think the one shot that the best shot that's never been seen by anyone is the 3-wood PGA National. I think it was 83. The 18th hole out the bunker, yeah, which was his 3rd shot, I believe, as well.
It was his 3rd shot. He was all over the place. It was his 3rd shot. I mean, if there is a video, I think there's a video of it somewhere, Simon. If someone could pick it up, it is incredible. And you go into a bunker there, they're not suitable for 3-wood shots. He could do stuff with a golf club that, what? I remember at the Masters, my first Masters in 92, I remember watching him in the bunker and just watched him for half an hour. I sat on the ground and I watched him come out of the bunker at Augusta and just tried to learn, tried to learn from him and how good he was and ask questions of him. And he was fantastic.
Because he was very
really
open
was.
with sharing what he did, wasn't
Most
he?
talented. Excuse me?
So he was very open with sharing. Granted, it was pretty hard to mimic what he did, but he was very open with his techniques and things.
Oh, very open. He was, more so than the Ben Hogan kept his thoughts to himself and his ways to himself. Seve was open in a very Spanish way, and he loved it. He loved teaching you because he knew he was better than you, and he loved teaching you how to do it. Knowing that you'd never ever get to his standard. But yeah, I sat on the ground outside the Masters clubhouse there at Augusta for half an hour and watched him play out the bunker, and it was extraordinary. And he was, this was 92. This was a long time ago, and it was the way he played it, the way, well before the sort of, box grew. He was using a 56 degree club, and it was remarkable. His hands, the way the hands worked. He was probably and still is. You talk about talent coming through in the game, and you talk about Rory's talent for the game. Huge talent for the game, Rory. Probably the most talented player of that generation. Seve was probably the most talented golfer ever to play the game.
And did actually the ball change from something like the old Ballesteros to the Pro V1? And we talked about the Persimmon Woods to Metal Woods and Greg Norman losing his advantage. I think you mentioned Seve when we were chatting about that earlier. And with the kind of shots that he could produce with the old equipment, did that change hurt him in a way that barely any other golfer was hurt by it, because he just couldn't make the ball do the same things that it used to with the old wound Ballesteros?
Yes, I think so. He lost a huge asset. As I said earlier, we could do things suddenly that I'm not saying as well as him, but better now, more like him, with the box groove ping L wedges and all the box grooves come out. We could suddenly miss a green on the wrong side and get up and down. Things that we could never do before. Things that he could do, but things that we could do. So yeah, equipment hasn't. It's brought us more together. The weaker players can do now that they couldn't do before, with the forgiveness of golf clubs nowadays. I mean, you hit a club now, an iron shot now, off the toe or the heel of the club. It don't near goes the same distance as it comes off the middle. Well, in our day, and in those days, I mean, it didn't go at all. You had to hit it off the middle. So the game has become a lot easier for everybody. And I think that's aided the amateur player more than it has us. The amateur players enjoying the game more, because suddenly, there's senior clubs made 12.5 degree drivers that the senior player can now see a ball flighted off the tee before it was, a couple of yards off the ground. Now it's flighted. Suddenly, with the centre of gravity going lower and lower of the irons, the senior player and the young players now hitting the ball a lot higher and further now than they ever have. The hybrid club was a fantastic invention, wasn't it? Whereby you could hit a 200-yard shot suddenly in the air. Yeah. Usually a 200-yard shot was a 2-iron along the ground. So, technology's changed. It's made the game better for the amateur player, more enjoyable for the amateur player. He's playing golf now, more golf than he ever did before. Yeah. So
if you were given the rule book, because there's all the distance reports, things come out, and if you were given the rule book, what would you do? I mean, so my view would be that I'd like to see a limit on loft, because I think at the very least limiting loft to sort of 56, 58 degrees, that then brings skill back into. If you short side yourself, you've got to be good with your short game to get out of jail. But what would you do?
Yes. I think that's one of them. I'd bring it back to 55 degrees. I would bring the ball back. Jack Nicklaus has been a great advocate of making the ball go 80% the distance it does now, i.e. back to the Titleist Tour Balata ball of the 90s that went, as you said so rightly, 45 yards less off the tee. Now, the longest hitters will still be longer, but we don't have to buy more land. We don't have to spend fortunes maintaining that land, watering it, feeding it, fertilizing it, cutting it, maintaining these tees that are used, once every 10 years at the Open, for instance? Crazy. Look at Augusta having to buy the 13th tee at Augusta Country Club. I think that cost them 20 odd million. I mean, the thing's gone out of, we can't be building 8,000 yard courses. We've got to get back to these traditional courses that were set up and beautifully done that are now having to come in and redone them all the time, and it's no good. And the cost involved and the maintenance involved. So if that ball went 80% the distance, if they were playing that Tour Balata ball now, you'd still see the best players win, but these courses would be still within the realms of what we're doing. Pebble Beach, for instance, one of the great courses of the world, is becoming too short, unfortunately. They're having to make par fives, the second hole par fives, into par fours because of the fact that, well, it's 520 yards. Well, it's too short. What? As a par five?
I've played that. That's still a par five.
It is, of course it is. Thank you for that.
It's definitely still a par five. Yeah,
it's a shame. But I would, if as a rule book, yes. That's not really a rule book thing. That's more a marketing, production sense. I would have liked to have worded. I'd have liked to the R&A and the USGA to have worded the long putter ban better. The wording of the long putter ban is grey. It should have been black or white. It's still a grey area. Are some players touching the body when they're using a long putter? Now, the word intent is in that rule book. I didn't intend to. Oh, well, it's okay then. I would have made it more black and white. It's the grey area of the long putter, and I would have banned the long putter. The shortest club in the bag should be a putter. End of. And get on with it. Nothing should be touching one surface. Even these putters that go up your arm. The Matt Kuchar ones, the Webb Simpson ones.
Yeah, the arm locks.
If that's not anchoring, I don't know what is. I wish there were more black and white with that particular wording of that particular rule. That's one that I would have said. Barra, yeah.
So
that's what I would have said. Rules.
Yeah. There's clearly an amusing story to this one because Nick Doherty messaged and said, ask him about the free drop I got in a bunker in Singapore.
Interesting when he won. Good. I'm glad Nick Doherty's listening, and I hope you're well. I mean that was a difficult one as well. There was wooden. They put wooden to protect the bunkers, and I'm sure Nick's laughing now at home listening to this. To protect the bunkers from falling in, they put old railway ties in at God, I forget the course, Palmetto or sort of Pal. Anyway, and there were railway ties up the face, and his ball was in the bunker, and it was against the railway ties with no real shot to play. Now, because it was against the wooden railway ties, Nick was able to get a drop and actually made a very good four. I think it was the 16th hole, if I'm not sure, Nick. And he went on to win. Well done. But it was one of those ones where you think, hang on, what is wood? What are wooden railway ties doing on a golf course in the way of play. You really, you know. I know Prestwick has them, and I'm sorry for that. But wooden railway ties in your way. I know that Pete Dyes used them to bound his areas of water and all the stuff, but they're not really. You're not hitting against them. And but anyway, great win. Yeah.
He said he made a 3.
Oh, did he? Oh, there you go. Was he better than his part?
So,
That's good.
So Steve Wilson asked, he said, who's the best player you played with or against, and what skill did you admire the most?
Tiger. Just because playing with him a few times, I think the one that springs to mind was 2005 in the third round of the Open at St Andrews there, where we went last off at 3 o'clock on the Saturday. And you were playing some legendary figure. I know he wasn't wearing his red at the time, that was Sunday, but it was you were playing some aura of somebody. And it was interesting to think, I got close to him at the turn. I was out in 2 less than him at the turn, turning back for home into the breeze. God, I mean, it was unbelievable. The thing about Tiger was that I always felt that he knew he was going to hold the 7-footer, the important 7-foot putt, that for par or a birdie. His caddy knew it was going to go in. His support group knew it was going to go in. The whole crowd knew it was going to go in. And less importantly, I knew it was going to go in, playing against him. And that's what he had over you. He had this putting way about him, and Spieth had it for a couple of years, who was as good as him for a couple of years, but Tiger had it and has it for 15, 20 years. Tiger had it for the knowing that the ball was going to go in. And what an advantage that is. You can talk about hitting the golf ball to the cows come home. You can talk about iron play. You can talk about chipping, right? But putting, my God, Tiger's putting was seen to be believed. And that's what made, to me, it was not just Tiger, it was the whole aura of him around playing with him and against him that he knew it was going to go in. Now, you talk about confidence in the game of golf. My God. I mean, that was it. Because I'm a great believer in it.
Because I think you said something similar. I've been watching the replays of the Masters this week, and the one from '97 that you played with them in the third round, and your interview in the press room afterwards was where you said that you weren't very pleased with his putting. I think was sort of the base comment you made. But I guess was that your first? Was that your first time playing with him in tournaments?
Of Tiger Woods, and he'd only turned pro, you know, in '96, I believe, the year before. This was his first time as a pro, I think, at the Masters, or just the second. And no one had really witnessed what I witnessed close hand that day. He never missed inside 10 foot. Now, I think for the week. Now, if you think about that out in Augusta, you think about putting down, a marble staircase job, as we talk about, and never missing from 10 foot. No wonder he won by 12 shots, It was incredible. And I hadn't seen the ball hit that way. The length of it was ridiculous. I mean, I got lucky at the first. I hit the downslope at the back of the bunker at the first of Augusta, and it went a yard past him. I was seconded into the first green. That was the last time I saw him all day. The second hole, I got to the top of the hill at the second hole, hit my 4-wood down short right as I did. He flew the green with a 9-iron. Now I've hit my drive, 270, and then I've hit my 4-wood short right. He flew the green with a driver 9-iron. And I thought, oh, hang on, this is something I haven't seen before, And hey, we hadn't, had we?
No.
That was the first of his 15 majors, and it was something to behold. And in the press room, I went in, and it was only the press room situation there was only because what happened in '96 at the Masters. Greg Norman had a 6-shot lead and didn't win. Faldo won, as we all know. So this young man at 21 years old, I believe he was, had a 9-shot lead, right? He shot 65 that day. I threw in my normal 74, you know, it's fine for me. He shot 65, and it was the easiest 65 I've ever seen. Finishing off with a driver up the last and a sand wedge to a back right pin. Now that's 35 yards on. So that means he was only 60 yards short of the putting surface at the last. Up a hill. I mean, it was ridiculous. Hit it to 6 inches and thank you very much. 9-shot lead. So they asked me in the press room, I went in, as you do, and you said, look, do you think Tiger's going to win? And I said, what? Sorry, have you been at were you at some other sporting event? Because what I've just witnessed there today, this guy's not going to win. He's going to win by a lot more than 9. And what I said, and I'll say it to you here, and it was wrong. Rocker was playing, Constantino Rocker, who's a good friend, and I played a lot of golf with Rocker, and we wish him well being in Italy right now. I said, Constantino Rocker, who was playing with Woods the next day on Sunday, the last round, I said, he's not Faldo, and Tiger Woods isn't Norman. Tiger Woods was better than Norman as a front runner, and that's saying something, because Norman was fantastic, right? And Rocker wasn't Faldo, and Rocker would admit that. And what I'm trying to say there was that 6-shot lead was not going to disappear. The 9-shot lead was not going to disappear. In fact, it moved to 12. And that was it. And they said, oh, Monty, you have no idea what you're talking about. I did know what I was talking about, because I was one of the only people that would witness what that was happening at that time. One of the first people to witness how good this guy was, how good he was, and at every part of the game, incredible. And we are lucky, you know, to have lived through that era. Every professional golfer has benefited from television rights and prize money. Every golf fan has been treated to watching this career unfold as it did. 15 years is possible with the competition as it is. And we've lived through this era, and we're very lucky to say we have lived in the Tiger Woods era, because it's been quite phenomenal. You know, you could never say Nicholas, Palmer, Hogan probably were the best sportsmen in the world. You talked about Jesse Owen, you talked about Michael Jordan, you talked about anybody else being the best, Muhammad Ali being the best sportsman in the world. But at that time, through his peak, Tiger Woods was the best sportsman in the world. And it's the first time that a golfer has ever reached that accolade.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So actually a question that's just come in from Dean Glass. It said, who's your dream 4-ball of people in their prime?
Well, I wouldn't pick Woods, because I'd lose. You know, I need to win. So I'd pick someone I think I could possibly have a game against. You know, dream 4-ball would always be, and it's, you know, I'm not in their prime as golfers. You know, you'd love to play Nicholas, Palmer, and Hogan probably in their prime, I suppose. You know, a fun 4-ball would be someone with a real character, more than his game of golf. You know, I enjoyed playing with Ernie. Ernie got on with it. Anybody that gets on with it, I would like to play with. Doesn't mess around. McIlroy doesn't mess around with it. Tom Watson got on with it. I've always been an advocate of quicker play than slower play, so I prefer that. I always admired Faldo and Langer, the way they prepared beforehand. The preparation of Faldo and Langer was second to none in preparation. Knowing what was going to happen before it happened, almost. Get a rhythm from Ernie and Freddie Couples to play. I like to play with them because I got rhythm from them. But the the four ball I'd love to bring back, and it can't happen now, is a family four ball. You know, I used to partner my mother, who was off 9 handicap, my late mum, and my brother. He was off. He's my older brother, Douglas. He plays off about 6, and my dad was off about 5. So they played together against mum and I, and the great games of golf. Great games of golf. We had a great time, and we played around. We went golfing holidays around Britain and also Europe, and it was great fun. So that's what I would love to bring back if I could. Of course, that's impossible, but they were fun games.
Actually, I think it was Anton 50720 said, "What's your favourite course in Scotland?"
Favourite course in Scotland?
That's quite specific,
Turnberry.
I guess. And, yeah.
Turnberry. Not just the best course in Scotland, the best course in Britain. Excuse me. Redone, the new Turnberry, they're calling it. I think the best course in Britain. Yes, it's down the road from my home course at Royal Troon, but I'm sure most of the Royal Troon members would admit that Turnberry has it in a vista, in a setting. On a good day, I know there are not many, but few and far between good days up there, but when you get around 8, 9, 10, 11, magnificent, absolutely magnificent round there with Ailsa Craig in the background. Good golf holes too, great golf course, and Turnberry for me would be the best course in Scotland. As a links course, the hardest course would be Carnoustie. The most historic, of course, and emotional would be St Andrews. And the best inland course would be Loch Lomond.
And do you see the Open? Is the Open going to go back to Turnberry anytime soon? Because it's been off for a while.
I know it's been off since 2009, and it deserves to be back on. I think, to be honest with you, I don't think the name of the Turnberry right now, the official name, Trump Turnberry, doesn't help it as such. But at the same time, it deserves the name back. It deserves to be an open venue. Yes, it's not easy to get to. Yes, the R&A take a bit of a hit with the amount of people that can get there. We're not talking 230,000 people. We're talking half that. But as a golf course, everyone would love to play Turnberry, I'm sure. Yeah.
And we'll be taking up a lot of your time, so really grateful for all the time you spent with us. So there are
Simon, you've been great to me over the years, and every time I come in, I learn something, and I think that's very important. You know, every round of golf that I play, it's very important that I learn something from it. And I think if your amateur players are listening, take that away. Something in that round of golf, whether it be a chip shot, a bunker shot, a putt, a drive, whatever it might be, the way it came out the rough there, whatever, learn from it. And I think every time I come in and see you guys at Precision Golf there, your technical knowledge, your expertise about the clubs and about what's being made now that I might not have heard of, and you're ahead of the game, is so interesting. And every time I leave your premises, I've learned something new, and that's the beauty of the game. You're always learning, and I think it's very important.
So I'm going to leave the last question to James's grandma, Janet, who is watching at home. She said, if you had your time again and weren't a golfer, what would you have been?
Interesting question. I'd have loved to have done so if I wasn't a golfer. I wouldn't be any other sportsman, I can assure you. I would have loved to have done something in a marketing sense within sport. I'd have loved to have been a marketeer within sport. I love sport. I love all sport, especially one-on-one. I love the tennis. Love the football when there's a goalkeeper and a penalty taken and who's going to win the battle, and the one-on-one with the tennis. I love that. And the golf, the one-on-one, the match play. I would have loved to have done something, a marketeering within the game, within a game, a sports game. I'd have loved to have sold been a marketeer within the game of sport.
So everyone, there you go. We've had a great hour and 40 minutes of Colin's time. Really grateful for it. And there are a few Leeds United based questions coming through. I'm going to say that I think the story about you buying a big stake in Rangers was an April Fool's thing.
It was, believe me.
But really grateful for all your time. Really grateful for everyone who's tuned in and watched and sent questions in. Look forward to seeing you again once we're all allowed out. And thanks for your time. Thanks for being a friend of ours. But basically, so hope you and Sarah and the rest of the family all stay well through the next however many weeks we're all locked up. And I hope we see you soon.
Stay safe, and as the government say, we've got to stay at home. I know it's difficult, but stay at home and protect us all. But thank you, Simon and James, and all you do for the game. Thanks a lot.
It's great fun. Thanks, Colin.